Thanks, Robin. Thank you very much. Quite an introduction. So here I am to help to bring up the profile, to raise the profile of documentary yet again this semester. I'm very happy to do it. I'm very happy to have the honor to be the journalist in residence in documentary. I see that my colleague in documentary and colleague Professor Barry Lazar is on the call. So Barry, hello, welcome from PEI, I think. Please, if I want you to pipe in, like I'm sure you'll have lots of things to say. So without further ado, even though more people will be joining, no doubt, let me start this talk. I thought I'd talk about short documentaries because it's easy to show short documentaries online, but also because it has really become quite the thing. And by short documentaries, I do not mean the myriad of information capsules. Some of them are brilliant, that you see on YouTube, you see everywhere, about the Magna Carta, or you name it, the Vikings, recent event, all kinds of subjects, are done in capsule form, short videos. That's not what I mean about short documentaries. I mean short documentaries that, go by the same rules as documentaries. And those rules are, you need facts, yes, which are what capsules are about, but more important, or just as important, you need a story. And that is very much the appeal of documentary today, really. I think that the promise of docs falls somewhere between what the information media is doing and what fiction films are doing. That is, that you have information you can trust, which is why you go to mainstream media most of the time, but with a great story to help you, absorb this information. I think also I was reading that documentaries have become more popular today as distrust of the mainstream media has grown. And we all know about the mistrust of the mainstream media, God knows, if only because we all know about Donald Trump and his cohorts. So it's interesting to know that documentary is filling in somewhere where mainstream media somehow is struggling. And I think it's for both of those reasons, because you can trust it, there's an integrity of point of view, and there's a good story, right? Now, why has it become, why have we suddenly been, not awash, but there's a lot of short documentaries, the Sundance, all the big film festivals have a category, not just of feature-length documentaries, feature-length films, but also short docs. A lot of it comes from the mainstream media. I don't know if you people follow as avidly as I do the New York Times or the Guardian. Those are probably my two favorite newspapers of all times. Both of them have a section now. I mean, a section, if you're online, when you go down the daily run through, there's often a short doc, what they call op docs at the New York Times, and you're going to be seeing a few of them today, which they promote, and which comes and complements the already the vast amount of information that you find in the Guardian and the New York Times. So partly that has been one of the reasons for the evolution and for the rise of the short doc, if you want. And the other thing is too, I think it's, documentary, as I mentioned last semester, is a great thing because just about almost anyone can do it. I mean, if you have, a camera and minimal skills, or even just a phone in some cases, you can actually, do some pretty good stuff with not very much. And you don't have to be a somebody, contrary to feature films where you have to be somebody to be able to even put your foot in the door. And I'm not talking just about Hollywood, I'm talking here in Canada. So I wanted to show you some examples and start talking more concretely about the appeal of the short docs. So I'm going to share my screen right now. We are recording this, right? Yes. Okay, so this is a series in the New York Times, a recent series. And it's called Cause of Life. And of course, what is the inspiration of this? It's because of the pandemic. That is a subject, you know, that has a very rich subject indeed. And God knows the United States has lost, I think, 300,000 people. So there is reason to mourn. A lot of, I've noticed a lot of networks have started doing, you know, in memoriam. Well, this is the New York Times take on it. They've done very short documentaries on sometimes exceptional, sometimes not that exceptional, certainly unknowns, but who have, you know, you know, there's always a story to tell. And I'm going to show you two of them. First of all, the story of Umberto Trujillo.
My dad was the postmaster of Phoenix, but his first job, he was a bricklayer. He built stuff all across Phoenix. Fixtures at St. Agnes Catholic Church, Christie's Cabaret. Helped build the main post office. He was just one of the bricklayers on the job. So when he became postmaster, he just would say, I run the building that I built. Look how far he came. Umberto Inigus Trujillo Jr. They called him Junior. He was born in Phoenix, and he grew up in the Dupa Villa projects. How do I explain the Dupa Villa projects? Most of his friends he grew up with didn't make good life choices. His dad was into drugs and bad things and passed away when he was 6 years old. My grandfather. So he had been through a lot. Thrift stores, food stamps, raised by a single mom. But my dad is a comedian and he makes everything a joke. So like when we say, we'll see you later, he's like, yeah, that's what my dad said. And then I never saw him again. And that was my dad. Sarcastic and kind of a smartass. I think that's what got him through. He was a really good athlete naturally. Baseball, basketball, football, even played football for a year at Phoenix College, but it just didn't work out. He always felt like he was not book smart. He felt like if I was just smarter, that was the big motivator for him. Like, you're going to college, like our whole life. Like, you're going to college no matter what. You're going to be the first graduate from college. He met my mom when he was 14 and she was 11. Yeah. My mom's family really took my dad in. He was always at her house. And you can see it because we have the pictures. Like, he's always with them. He got married young. My grandfather had just started his own masonry business. And so my dad and his brother-in-laws were certified bricklayers, and they went into that line of work. Safety, precision. When he did brickwork, it had to be perfect. It's the fundamentals that matter. Laying the foundation is key. If you don't do it right, it'll fall. I think he was 26, maybe. He was pretty young when it happened. The wall was like 5.5 feet, pure brick, but someone did something wrong. And the wall fell over onto his leg and tore something in his knee. He was devastated. He was going to be a foreman and then maybe have his own construction company someday. But after that, he was like, no, I'm done. At that time, my mom was a mail carrier. My dad was like, I could do that. So he took the test and then he became a mail handler in the night shift, processing mail. Being so ambitious, could see like his wheels are turning. Boisterous personality and everybody likes him. He's funny, he talks to everyone. So people would be like, have you ever considered management? I could do that. And so he became a supervisor and operational manager. If somewhere was struggling, he'd go in and help. Washington, D.C., New Mexico, Colorado. I can just hear him talking to managers at stations like, rain or shine, doesn't matter. You got to make sure that the mail gets out. There were times, like I know in my early adulthood, I hated the post office. He was always on night shifts and out of town a lot. Got to deliver the mail. That's just how it goes. They got divorced 2 or 3 years later. The truth is infidelity. He met people at work, so I was teen mom, so that was a lot of our conflict. When I graduated from college, he almost didn't come, but I'm really glad he did, because you could tell, and even in the pictures, it's a really proud moment for him. She's living the dream I originally had. And the thing with my dad is really, it's hard not to like him and get along with him. You can be mad at him for so long, but.
What the hell am I doing out here? Huh? Does anybody know? I'm trying to get my way to church and it's snowing so hard, everything's jacked up, man. Just thought I'd share that Sunday morning with you.
He can win you back over. He's really good at that. One day he called me in the morning and he saw, Mija, I got it. I got this job. I'm the first Hispanic postmaster. I'll run the whole show here. And he even had mariachis there because I'm gonna make sure I have my culture represented well. And that was my dad.
It was a great day of my life. I want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you.
He was the postmaster of Phoenix.
Topping our news this half hour, a somber ceremony earlier today. A procession through the streets of Phoenix to remember Postmaster Umberto Jr.
He had such a fighting spirit, I thought, because he was so stubborn. He's not going to let this virus beat him. Not this guy. He, fights for everything. Nothing beats him. At that time, no one could go to the hospital. You're not allowed in. So they had 3 nurses in there. 2 of them held his hand, and another one sang Amazing Grace as he passed. The post office here in Arizona put the flag at half-mast in his honor. And the procession, they led us by the main post office, the building he built. He just showed, you really can't do anything you put your mind to.
That is, I think, 7 minutes long, and it packs in almost as much as a regular length documentary would pack in so many minutes. And the first thing, of course, that you notice is that it goes quite fast, and it's abundantly illustrated. So it's really a synthetic storytelling mechanism, but it works because all the elements are there. First of all, I want to attract your attention to the name of the series. It's all done by the same guy, by the way, Ben Proudfoot. You'll see his name come back in that. And he's obviously got he's obviously got a certain recipe here, a formula. It's a classic story, but it works because there's a story. Not only do you have a compelling character, Umberto, but you have the person telling the story is very, very important here. So when you do this kind of thing, he had to find a good story. And this is a classic story of poor immigrant, does good, rises to the top. And you have his daughter, the storyteller, who's also a compelling character. You'll notice that they're shot like not far away. They're shot, close up, talking to the camera. So they grab you by the lapels. But the story, notice that it's never linear. It starts off, he was born here, he was in a poor neighborhood, he was an immigrant, and then suddenly there's tragedy that happens, there's an accident that happens. He was going to be this, but he had an accident in his leg, so his life was disrupted, and bang, something happens, and he manages to reinstall himself in something unexpected, the post office, and he rises to the top. So those are great stories, the ones that move up like on a staircase, and where there's unexpected events. A good story is never on the same line. It's never just happy or just sad. It's got to go up and down and have a climax and have a resolution. But I wanted to say that the title of the series is Cause of Life, not Cause of Death. This is the reason, the motivation for the series is COVID, but it's not, the accent is not, we're not caring so much about the death. We're caring about the life that this person lived before dying. And his death will mean that much more to you if you care about the life he has lived. So that's one example. I'm going to show you a second example, which I think is worth watching.
Can I make a comment just on the last one?
Yes, please. Wait.
I was really impressed with the way that it was structured with a dramatic arc. And the arc actually, it rises, you learn more and more about him, you get more engaged. And it's only in the last minute when you have the news announcer say that...
I didn't hear it.
You didn't hear me?
Say it again.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Can you say it again?
Sure. What impressed me is that there's a dramatic arc that is there, that you learn about his life. It keeps mounting, and it's only in the last minute when you hear the news announcer say that he died that it reaches an emotional climax and then comes down. So the actual death part, I like the fact that you pointed out it's about living. The actual death part takes maybe the last minute of a 7-minute doc, but that there really is a dramatic curve that brings you up and that brings you down towards resolution. And that's a function of the way that it was structured and edited.
Are there any other comments or questions at this point? Sorry about that. Okay, so let's watch the second one. I think the second one is particularly worthwhile. You are sharing your screen. It's not a good day for technology. It's Word. The competition between Apple and Microsoft is scandalous, by the way. It makes opening a Word document on a Mac like you can eat your lunch waiting for it to open. It's coming. It's because I had to reboot, sorry. If anyone has anything to say about what they saw or want to ask any question, it's a good time. It's coming, it's just really long. Okay. Okay. So this is still in the series Cause of Life, directed by Ben Proudfoot, who's probably just an independent documentary filmmaker and has found a good line here with these short docs. So this is the story of Calvin Haworth.
Okay, well, you can just start by giving us your full name and where you were born.
It seems odd to be giving my granddaughter my full name.
I know, but you know.
It's Calvin Albert Hayward.
They called him Cal. He was born in Kansas. He was one of 6 boys. They didn't have money. He always wanted to do sports, but he couldn't. He had to work and he had to contribute to the household. So he started running. He didn't have to pay money to do that. He went to World War II. He was a military policeman helping liberate camps. He's so follow the rules. He's a lifelong conservative Republican who listened to Rush Limbaugh. You do not break a rule with Calvin Hayward.
A good brisk walk or run will make you feel better if you follow the rules.
When I was 4, my dad was going to work in New York City, and someone came down the road the wrong way that was drunk and high and hit him head on. He died instantly. My mom said the day she found out he was dead, my grandpa was like, this is not going to be in vain. We don't want him to be a statistic, and we are going to change things. Let's join MAD. And there was no local chapter. So my mom and my grandpa spent a year getting a charter and then started a MAD chapter, doing the work, hosting events, raising awareness. He really stepped into that role of like being there for us and being that figure for us. When I was 6, my grandpa took me to my first race and I was hooked. So by the time I was 12, I ran the city championship in Duluth. At the time, it was a big deal. And my grandpa's the loudest cheer. He cheers the last person in. I heard from multiple people from high school saying I was terrible, and your grandpa and grandma would even cheer for me. Like they would wait on the course until we had all come in. His most famous line that he would say is, pour it on, lay it all out there. You know, like there should be nothing left right now. Pour it on. And so I poured it on into the finish line and I won the city championship, which set me up for a career in running. I went that cross country season undefeated. I won the cross country title. My grandpa was there again. I win the national title. And 2007, I won that bronze in Osaka for the World Track Championships. My first phone call was to my grandpa, and he was so excited. And then the next year, I get to the Olympics, this lifelong dream. 2008 is the New York City Marathon. It was so nerve-wracking because I didn't have time to really properly train for it. I didn't even know if I could run the full distance. And that's where my dad died. But my grandpa is like, you can do this, kid. He believed in me. 13 miles into the New York City Marathon, I started to panic. And I was like, I'm really tired. I'm in over my head. And I just thought, I just had this mental moment where I was like, I don't think I can do this. And I just had this voice saying you're fine. And I actually pictured my dad. And I found out later, it was just blocks away from where he died. And then I just had this calmness of being like, you can do this. Pour it on. Pour it on. At the time I ran the fastest debut American marathon, my grandpa was so proud and That was like so important for me. I never would have made it without him. I was in Minnesota in September. My mom and I were walking, and she gets a phone call from the home. And she's like, I just want you to know your grandfather tested positive for coronavirus. And then the next day they called me and they said, you can come in. You can come in and see him. And I just grabbed his hand and squeezed it. There's just nothing. No pressure. I feel thankful that my last moments were his breath, his body very calm, and us being able to say everything we wanted to say. And just telling him how much we loved him, and how much we would miss him. And then he was gone. When I asked him to do it, he was so choked up about it. He was just like, well, he's like so choked up. He's like, well, that would be an honor of a lifetime. He was there for the good moments, and he was there for the bad moments. He's just there. And that's my grandpa. That's my papa.
So, what did you think of that one? Quentin?
It's pretty intense though. It's really powerful, like emotionally it's really, really good. And I like the fact that, like, I think that it was like the second or the third scene we saw. It was like a running, I don't know how to say that in English, but like the running field. And so since the beginning, like we like put the story, like we went into the story already. And also I really liked how like we discovered this story through her life and through her story too. And it was a pretty
That's a good point, because again, you see he's got a compelling storyteller for sure, and a guy whose story is not as extraordinary as the one we just saw with Umberto. I mean, he went into the army and he was a lifelong Republican. That's not really extraordinary, but she makes up for it. She's an Olympic athlete, right? I mean, there's two things that you need as a storyteller. You need the love of the person you're talking about, and she has it like the other daughter in spades, in this case, granddaughter. And she makes up for the fact that his life is not that extraordinary, but his life made hers extraordinary. What else do you notice?
I noticed that they talked about like all the positive moments that they shared together with pictures and things like that. And then after his death, they bring it back kind of like full circle. And it makes the moment of his death, which is already very emotional, watching her cry and whatnot, even more emotional, because you heard the good things and you watch the death and you get reminded of the good things again.
Exactly. So that's the point of view. So as I said, you need three things to do a documentary. You need a good story, you need a compelling character or characters, and you need a point of view. And the point of view here, as I said, it's not death. So just when you think that the story's over, boom, we come back, because it's not about grieving his passing. It's about celebrating his life, and it's a nice little unexpected. That's what makes a good story, when it takes you somewhere unexpected. In this case, he's just died. You don't expect to see the granddaughter getting married. So it's a very good scene. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, how how intensely it is illustrated. Like I'll show you just the first minute to just watch how much stuff and how much visual stuff is in here. I'll share the screen again. Now I'm back.
Okay, well, you can just start by giving us your full name and where you were born.
It seems odd to be giving my granddaughter my phone number.
I know, but you know.
It's Calvin Albert Hayward.
They called him Cal.
Just there, first of all, notice that in both cases, they have put a live picture of a dead person, which really, really adds something. In both cases, you don't expect necessarily to see a live interaction. You've got a live interaction, and you've got it, in this case, right up front. And then notice the edit, she comes right in, they call him Cal. And
he was born in Kansas. He was one of 6 boys. They didn't have money. He always wanted to do sports, but he couldn't. He had to work and he had to contribute to the household. So he started running. He didn't have to pay money to do that. He went to World War II. He was a military policeman helping liberate camps. He's so follow the rules. He's a lifelong conservative Republican who listened to Rush Limbaugh. You do not break a rule with Calvin Hayward.
Good brisk walk or run will make you feel better if you follow the rules.
When I was 4.
So that's 1 minute long, 1 minute 10. You've got the whole introduction. You know who Calvin is. You know what his background is, how he grew up, what his values were, and just when you think it's going to be smooth sailing, chapter 2.
My dad was going to work in New York City, and someone came down the road the wrong way that was drunk and high and hit him head on. He died instantly. My mom said the day she found out he was dead, my grandpa was like, this is not going to be in vain. We don't want him to be a statistic, and we are going to change things. Let's join MAD. And there was no local chapter. So my mom and my grandpa spent a year getting a charter and then started a MAD chapter, doing the work, hosting events, raising awareness. He really stepped into that role of like being there for us and being that figure for us.
So another minute, and you've got an unexpected bump in the road and quite a huge tragedy. In fact, notice how it's illustrated. Like there's a picture almost every 10 seconds, and it's now we're going to another chapter.
When I was 6, my grandpa took me to my first race, and I was hooked. So by the time I was 12, I ran the city championship in Duluth. At the time, it was a big deal. And my grandpa's the loudest cheer. He cheers the last person in. I heard from multiple people from high school saying I was terrible, and your grandpa and grandma would even cheer for me. Like they would wait on the course until we had all come in. His most famous line that he would say is, pour it on, lay it all out there. Like there should be nothing left right now. Pour it on. And so I poured it on into the finish line, and I won the city championship, which set me up for a career in running. I went that cross-country season undefeated. I won the cross-country title. My grandpa was there again. I win the national title. And 2007, I won that bronze in Osaka for the World Track Championships. My first phone call was to my grandpa, and he was so excited. And then the next year, I get to the Olympics, this lifelong dream. 2008 is the New York City Marathon. It was so nerve-wracking because I didn't have time to really properly train for it. I didn't even know if I could run the full distance. And that's where my dad died. But my grandpa is like, you can do this, kid. He believed in me. 13 miles into the New York City Marathon, I started to panic. And I was like, I'm really tired. I'm in over my head. And I just thought, I just had this mental moment where I was like, I don't think I can do this. And I just had this voice saying like, you're fine. And I actually pictured my dad. And I found out later, it was just like blocks away from where he died. And then I just had this calmness of being like, you can do this. Pour it on. Pour it on.
So that's the third and the biggest chapter. And of course, we know why, because it's her life comes in here and bolsters his. It's about her life and his life. And there is a climax. Every good story has a climax. The climax is the New York Marathon, where she doesn't think she's going to make it. She's haunted by her father's death. And she, of course, pulls through. And then the fourth chapter is the phone call about him getting sick. And the fifth chapter is the happy ending, getting married and living happily ever after, we hope. So, your comments? Yes. Robert?
Oui. Hello.
Oui. Hello.
Yeah, it's I think it's very fast paced. I find it interesting how they use pictures and how they use visually. They move on pictures, they zoom in on pictures because very, very fast, and it keeps your attention going. It keeps you very sucked in all the time. There's not a moment of breathing. There's not a moment where you have to since it's so short, it's not that bad because after you're done, you stop and you think about it and you kind of take it all in. But as you go, it's kind of very emotional all the time. You have high emotions the whole way through, bad, good, but there's no breathers.
There's no respect. Absolutely. They keep you on a.
Yeah.
And of course, you'll notice that there's a soundtrack.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't particularly like the last one. I thought it was over the top. This one, I think, passes,
Mm-hmm.
but it heightens up the intensity.
Yeah.
And you'll notice too that the editing where she says there's a picture, she says a sentence, there's another picture, she says another sentence. It's really clipped in a way that you really feel the story moving forward really, really quickly, but you can follow everything. Yeah. Everything is, you're not confused for a second, right? Or is anyone confused? No. Did anyone lose anything or, scratching their head? Pardon?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
The first question is that we cannot see many filming scenes during this. I mean, most of this documentary is based on the pictures and the archive videos. The editing is, as you told and explained, is very good because you can see the life story of this man and how he could inspire her daughter, her granddaughter. So this is very interesting for me because sometimes when you have not a lot of time, I don't know, maybe you don't have a lot of staff to make the documentaries. You can use very well the pictures and the archive videos, I think. And it depends on how you manage this in your documentary.
Yes. It's a good lesson about, you never have too many pictures, right? You just have to have the right ones. You can't confuse people with the wrong picture sort of thing. But note, if you had half the amount of pictures, you had the same woman talking, and she's a great talker, right? She was picked carefully. She's a wonderful talker. She's very charismatic, and she goes from happy to sad to crying to, but the pictures are really, when you do a documentary, you're really doing a visual thing more than an audio thing. The pictures are really, really, really important. In fact, it's proven that when people watch a documentary or a film, they remember the pictures first. Then they remember what the characters were saying. And the last thing they remember is what the narrator, when you have a voiceover, that's the last thing they remember. So it goes to show you that your order of priority is pictures, characters that are in action, that are part of the story, and only lastly, what you are adding or telling the audience.
So I have another question about the storyteller. I mean, the character who narrates this story, and the both of documentary you have shown us, the both characters, when they were speaking, they looked directly to the camera. So,
Yes.
but for example, last term when we have something about the document, it was not about documentary, it was about video reporting. They asked us to ask the people, the characters, don't look directly at the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to know if, because now I just, for example, for my first footage trials, I just use this technique to ask the people don't look at the camera directly, but I see now that they look directly. So I want to know.
Good question. TV versus film. Not looking at the camera is a TV device. It is absolutely, I did TV, current affairs for quite some time, and you never look at the camera. You're always askance, which I personally hated. But so it's because you're addressing either the people you're talking to or something like that. But in documentary, you have the choice of doing whatever you want. So you can use the TV formula if sometimes it's hard to ask people to look and address the camera. Most people are camera shy, like they don't have the naturalness that you've just seen, and they probably did many takes of what before they actually clinched the one that made it. But you can ask for, in certain circumstances, it's absolutely called for, but you have to know when and where. You can't just use that all the time because it can be seen as over the top. There has to be a compelling reason for someone to be addressing you head on because, they're grabbing you by the lapels, as I said. But the reason why people, Barry wants to pipe in, I think, about this. But essentially it's because there's a TV tradition and there's the documentary tradition. Barry.
Just a couple of points. One, if it's a Zoom interview, they're almost always going to be looking at the camera. The same way I'm seeing 12 or 9 faces looking right at me. So it's very hard not to do that. But the other is the aesthetic that you're pointing out that Marianne brought up, and I think you've actually elucidated quite a bit. In television journalism, the way I was taught, it's the reporter telling the story. It's not the main character telling the story. So when the main character is talking to the screen like I am, I have control of the story. In documentary, you have the luxury of deciding who's telling the story. And in both these wonderful films that you've shown, it's not even the dead person telling the story. It's someone who is emotionally connected to them, who's bringing us into their lives. And so there's the luxury of having them talk directly to us. And I think we connect directly to them. I think documentary filmmaking gives you a wider variety of aesthetics and choices that you can make. But the point that I think you're making, you don't want to confuse them and have a whole bunch of things simply to show that you know different techniques.
But you have it really depends on the subject matter. For example, if you have a character, you're doing a documentary, and the character is talking just about what they like to wear in the morning, to have them talk to the camera would be kind of ridiculous. But if they're talking about something that's tragic, that they're talking about something that changed their lives, well, now that's different. If you have a compelling reason to have them take people by the lapels, then you can do it. But you can't do it, just like it's not something you just pace whenever you feel like it. It's got to match the moment and what the kind of story you're telling. In this case, it's perfect because they're very much the people, the family members are very much the narrators. They're both close to the story. And they're close to you because of the way they're shot and the way they address the camera.
So it's good to know that, because personally, I prefer to ask the characters to speak with me directly. Look directly on camera. But I was thinking that I can't use it all the time. So, okay, now, thank you.
Well, first of all, you'll notice that people, it's hard They've even devised a whole technique. You probably saw this, Barry, where people get to look at, anyways, because people naturally will look at the person rather than an inanimate object. If you're asking them to do it long, they have trouble doing that for a length of time. So there's that to take into consideration too.
Okay.
Are there more questions?
Yes, I do have one question about the. I think I can take off my hand. I have a question about the climax part.
Yeah.
So, I'm wondering because, like, in this story, like, for sure there is at the end the climax part with the death of the grandfather. But I kind of had two moments where I was about to cry. So when the dad story and after the grandfather story, is it a good thing when we make documentaries to have can we like put different climax moments and kind of play with the emotional state of the viewers? And is it like
yeah, you mean can I have more than one climax? Is that it?
Kind of, but can we have, I think it depends on the content. So if we have different climax moments, but like, can we also so that's more directly, like, I don't know how to express that, sorry. So depending on the content, we might have different climax, but can we also play on that and like make it in a way that like we're gonna like consciously like play with the emotional state of the viewers, and like we bring that intense moment and then a decreased moment and then like come back again, kind of like, you know.
But you're describing what a good story is, you know, like technically, and there are books written about this, just before the end of Act 1, there is un rebondissement. There is an unexpected, something happens, come out of nowhere that throws you. You'll notice, watch TV, watch films, you'll notice that this is a classic thing that happens, like, whoops, there's a wrench that's been thrown into the story. So you're going along like this and then woof, you know, so yes, but there's always only one major climax. Like the tragedy, the father's death is that bump in Act 1 that says, oh my God, you know, it changes the story, but then the story keeps going and going and building, and there's a climax and then a resolution. That's the classic pattern. But you play with the audience all the time. You know, a story that stays on the same keel and has only one kind of emotion, be it funny or serious or sad, has failed somehow. There has to be a contrast. And speaking of contrast, I don't know if you've noticed in chapter 4, the phone call comes, the grandfather's at the hospital, they're coming in to see him. She says, with emotion in her voice, I took his hand, there was no force. She's running. It's a wonderful contrast to contrast the emotion. She's running for her life and she's full of strength, but she's holding the hand that has no strength. This is the kind of editing that makes your story strong. It sends technically contradictory signals, but it brings the complexity of the story home. Yeah, so notice those things.
I just another part of my question about the climax. What makes a good climax?
What makes a good climax?
Yes.
Well, heightened emotion. Like, you know, you realize, first of all, you realize that the story has evolved. You know, it can't come in Act 1. It's got to come towards the end, you know. So you know your characters, you know the difficulties they've had, and suddenly something, it's a notch above. There's an excruciating something, either good or bad, but it's got to be something that is a heightened emotion, a heightened expectation. That's generally the climax. And the resolution is, well, you know, you sort of you tie the knots of the situation that you have explained for the last 5 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes, whatever, no matter what. But this story could have been told in 60 or 90 minutes. There was definitely lots to talk about, but it is extraordinarily effective because it doesn't miss a beat and it doesn't let you get too sentimental or ever bored either. That's part of what makes it work, I think.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments? You may comment as well.
I just wanted to add that I have a feeling that Ben, forget his last name, is probably a really good interviewer. Like,
yes,
like yeah, I don't know. Just the fact I don't know what he does, but maybe he starts out with those like easier questions, like, and then I don't know. I just have a feeling he gets a lot from those people, and how much of that is him being an amazing interviewer, them being great storytellers.
Yes, the interviewing has a lot to do with it, because obviously it looks like it's flawless. It's coming like out of a faucet when you hear these people talk, but obviously they've been primed. The questions have been asked and re-asked, and the right questions, you know, have been asked as well. Good point. Ben Proudfoot is his name. And I encourage you, because we're going to pass on, to go see the whole series. I think there's 5 or 6 of them. Cause of Life, New York Times, it's called Op Docs, for opinion docs. So I will share my, yeah, did you want to say something?
Just a quick point. When you go on and look at it, you'll notice that there's a whole team behind him, including a series researcher. So they put in so much effort to find the best people, and we can assume that there were people that they decided not to do after they'd done the initial interviews or something. So they and they've got editing teams behind them. It's not he's obviously responsible for it. He's the director. He may be doing the interviews, or he may not be doing the interviews, but he has a strategy that is working for all of these, I guess. But there is a team behind him, so that by the time you see what you're seeing, you're not seeing what he's not including. And there could be tons of other material that they simply decide. So the process, I think, to arrive at these 5 or 6 docs from the hundreds of thousands of people that he could go to is really remarkable. If you go onto the Guardian site, which does something similar, you will see that they've only got a couple of documentaries, but they've got over 1,000 now little portraits of individuals that they've done. They just a picture and a description of who they are, and a couple of these have emerged as docs. So the process to get to what we're seeing is really complex and is really thoughtful.
Yeah, no, good point. He's really handpicked these people, and that's why it is so effective. And there's a lot of effort and money that's gone into this, obviously, because the number of archives and pictures, and you know, just the quality of the edit. There's been a long edit, so there's a lot of work. So it's good. These are nice, short little things. You sort of look at them and dissect them easily. So I encourage you to do so. Now I'm going to leave current affairs, and okay, I have to share my screen, and show you again, always in the idea of short docs, but this is not current affairs. It's still a New York Times, so. It's called Solo Piano. I can't seem to undo this. I can't see. Wait a minute. Okay, sorry. So there's less pictures, but there's a story. What did you think of that?
I like the fact that like the music evolves through the movie, so it gives like a rhythm to the story, and like it's super it's basic. I don't know how to say that, but like super simple, the melody and everything, and then like it gets more sophisticated through the movie, and at the end it comes back to the simple 2 notes or 3 notes. And I also like I don't know, it was kind of like I didn't like the part of like wasn't clear what it was at the end on the red thing, but it was kind of a scene of like mourning. I felt that way, like you were mourning the piano in front of the house.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, there's only one essentially image, but there's a climax. The story is evolving. It's about an inanimate object, but it's to show you what you can do with not very much. There's one picture essentially, or I mean, many pictures taken, but you're not changing this. You're always at the same place, but the story is evolving. It's the piano is alive, and it's more and more and more alive, and then that's the climax when they start to breaking it up, the death of the piano, and then you get the mourning. It's the mourning of the piano, sort of the death of the piano. So, yeah.
I have a question about how we can understand that it's a real documentary or it's decorated documentary. I mean, maybe someone puts one piano in place, and the people that they are not real. I mean, they are playing, they are coming, and they can pick the pictures, and then I don't know how to say. I mean,
you mean this has been contrived? You mean it's not real?
Maybe. How we can understand it is real?
Well, I think you have to trust that no, they would have had to find a lot of people to just, go and do this and do that. I think someone noticed the piano on the curbside and decided to take pictures on a daily basis, and just edited that in a way with music. And the music is half the battle in this case, right? More than half the battle. And I think you have to trust. I mean, that's part of what I was saying at the beginning. You have to have an integrity of point of view. If you think you're being tricked, you're not going to want to watch this.
No, I remember for the workshop that we had, you spoke about one very famous documentary in Canada. It is about the North Pole, and you said that some scenes are not real; they just decorated the scenes.
Yeah,
so
well, he got
criticized.
Nanook of the North. We're talking about Nanook. He got very much criticized for that because he had staged some, but that's different. Like, you can stage certain things. In fact, the last documentary I'm going to show you, obviously there's been some staging. I don't think that's necessarily forbidden in a documentary. You can't, but you can't invent something and pretend it's real if it's not. You can ask people to do things for the camera. We do this in news, in fact, which always looks fake in news. You just have to make sure it looks real for when you're doing documentary. But you can stage things so to be more dramatic, and it's important because you, contrary to the news guy, you have a story to tell, and so you need the trappings of storytelling, which used to be just reserved to feature films, So you can arrange for some things, but you can't just invent a situation and pretend it's real if it's not.
I really liked it, and I was just wondering about the legalities of this, because I try and do lots of like street photography and stuff, and sometimes I'm like asking the people if I can take their picture, and then they suddenly pose or get awkward, and then I'm like, oh, if I hadn't asked, this would have been a really nice picture. But then I feel really rude just pulling out my camera and taking pictures of people without the permission. So I don't know, even with this documentary, what would be the legalities of it? Or if somebody could make this beautiful documentary and then maybe have legality problems later. I don't know.
It's easier in the States than in Canada. Correct me if I'm wrong, Barry, but in Canada, there was a famous case where the picture was taken by a photographer and it was put in a magazine called Vice Versa, and it went to court. And as a result, you cannot take pictures generally of people without asking them. If they're strangers, if you're on the street, technically, I mean, people do it all the time and get away with it, but technically you're liable for that. In the States, there's something called, what's it called, Barry? Well, it's part of freedom of expression, but there's a term for it. So there's more leeway in that respect. But so I don't know what the filmmakers in this case had to go through, if anything. They might have said they might have answered that question by just simply putting outside of the, this is being filmed, and so people knew that they were being filmed. Like that would be one way of going about it. So I can't say much more on that, but it can be, it's a good question because that does complicate our lives a lot.
In Canada, you will see a tremendous number of blurring. I've noticed more and more of street scenes of people. And the easiest way is exactly what Francine suggested. Just have a sign out there saying this is being, we are photographing people coming to the piano or something like that. And you didn't see people looking up at the window and saying, no, no, no. They would have taken that stuff out. And you're also right, the laws are different. That famous court case had a tremendous impact in Canada of someone just being filmed or shot, a camera shot of someone on a bench.
Yeah. So I would like to show you, yes, Robert.
It's also that I think these people were not very recognizable in the documentary. Like we couldn't make out their faces or who they were. So I think in that case, it's not a legal problem because you can't see who they are. And also, Eva, just for your question, the things we did also for classes was to take pictures and ask people afterwards if they were okay with their picture. So what I would do is to take a picture of someone and then go up to them and be like, oh, I took this picture of you. I can delete it if you want, but it's very pretty. Like, I like it. What do you think? Can I keep it for my project? And then they would just say, yeah, of course, it's a nice picture. Send it to me and whatever. So
that's a good strategy. Generally, you're right, Eva. If you go and ask them beforehand, they'll say, oh, no, not me. But if you do it and then say, I really like this picture and you'd be good, then you have an easier way of, Robert has a good point.
Also, just another point, thank you, Robert. But sometimes it's not even court cases that I'm worried about or people making a problem out of it. It's also the police, because when I was living in Germany, I was doing a street theater project and we had cameras on the metro, and the police stopped one of my friends' groups and they had to pay like a huge fine for taking videos and pictures in the metro. So I never thought the police would get into it, but they did, and we didn't even know about this.
The laws in Germany might be even stricter than in Canada, but I don't know what they are. So,
shooting in the metro in Montreal, by the way, is extremely difficult, and you will get stopped if you don't get permission. And it can be, we've shot in the metro, and it can take a while to get permission. I just wanted to there's an Oscar-nominated film called Dick Johnson is Dead, which is a documentary and has a tremendous number of reenactments and artificial scenes. And it's the most amazing film of that level that I've seen. It's obviously a documentary, and yet there's all sorts of fantasy stuff that goes in. And I think one of the things that happens with us as documentarians is the same thing that happens to people who are writing literary nonfiction, is you make a pact with your reader or with your viewer that says, here's my approach to filmmaking, and trust me that it's real. And as long as you can maintain that bond, you can get away with a fair amount of stuff. But as soon as the reader or the viewer says, I don't trust what's happening anymore, we've lost that person.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So just about like the staging thing, kind of like what just Barry said. How because in the first portrait we saw of Life's, I don't remember the name, Cause of Life, we saw that she went to the post office to post something. So as a director, can you ask her kind of, do you have something to post today, or Do you think are you okay to post something like for the documentary? Like how far we can go with the staging part? It's kind of a big question in my in my creative like work, because I'm like, how can I influence a little bit what's happening, but not too much, because I still want to do like reality. So like yeah, it's kind of, yeah, I don't know.
I think I think it's absolutely legitimate to ask people, if you want to show that there's something happening in the post office and nothing is happening at the moment you're there. And, you can ask someone if you happen to be wanting to post that letter, now would be a good time, or, you can sort of help things along, sort of thing. But I was going to show you an animated short, because animation is big, but I'm going to jump to the last thing I wanted to show you. And if we had time, we'll come back to this, because it has a lot of staging in it. It's a bit longer. I think it's up for some kind of award. It was done by the National Geographic, and it's 13 minutes long. Here it is. Let's
people are not asking the right questions. They're not asking the right questions because they kind of think they already know the answers.
Today, we are expecting 500 recruits that are coming in. From 500, we want 82 graduates. This training is going to be hard, but I know these ladies, they are strong.
Also, could you move your mouth, please?
We are coming here, everyone. We know we are coming here for training. And it's good to work together. You cannot move alone. So try to help each other, encourage each other. Teamwork, guys, teamwork. Together, we are one.
Here, today, we are all equals. The only thing that will set you apart is if you've got character and spirit. And if you do, we'll teach you how to fight.
I've spent my life doing things in real life that most kids can't do on a PlayStation. Living every kid's dream, jumping out of helicopters, blowing stuff up. My background is counterinsurgency warfare. We go out, we look for a fight, we want to finish it. Akashinga shifts the strategy on conservation, having women come out and do what was perceived to be a male-only role. We started this program with 16 women. And now every young woman, every young girl out there wants to be a ranger.
It's a tough job. It's a dangerous job. It's one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Some of you will die doing this job. You're going to be out there up against armed men. They will be willing to kill elephants or anybody that's standing in their way. And the only thing standing in their way will be you.
These ladies are like me. Their life is tough. It's very difficult to survive. They work hard to having food. They work hard to have even clothes to wear. Yes, before I joined Akashinga, my life was very difficult. Even to give food to the babies, it was too difficult. I was crying every day, every day. I was telling myself, this is the job that I want. I'm sacrificing my everything, my life, for protecting the wildlife.
Francine stood out from the beginning. From day one, when we did selection with the first program, she walked differently, she looked differently. She became one of our best rangers very quickly. Now here she is, ready to lead the selection of what will become 240 more rangers in the next 12 months.
Now I'm a leader, and I'm going to teach other ladies to be like me. Some of them, they are going to finish. Some of them, they are going to surrender.
Over the next 72 hours, we're going to expose these women to the 4 pillars of misery, to be hungry, cold, tired, and wet. We're going to push them to their physical and, most importantly, their mental limits. We're going to see what they're made of.
When you come here, just tell us about your life, the challenges that you faced.
Dauya chinawa dawira kunoka ndira kuchengeta mwana wangu Yeshua plus inini wanda kuchengeta Yeshua kuti chengetedze mhuka dzedu sezvo dzakatikodzera tukona iyo
zita rangu ndinonzi Melody Magonyo. Murume ndanga ndakarorwa nemurume wangu aindirova ndofunga ndine vanga randinaro nakamboti chemanika mpezo tikati nenhamo yangu yandinayo kaindimhanye ndova ndamhanya apo zveshuwa nokuda kunyatsoona situation iri kumashure ndakati muchiona ndiri kushanda nesimba nemoyo unoda ndakapererera.
Sorry, you're in the way here.
Restez du bon côté avec le système d'avertissement sur l'angle mort. La technologie qui nous connecte. C'est ça, le Nissan Qashqai.
Okay. Oh, Jesus. Sorry.
Even pandaimhanya kubva tiri kuchikoro kwachunju vaitongozviziva kuti ndaitaura kuti handisiva nemusikana akapfeka dhiresi ngenyini.
I'm going to push you. I'm going to say yes. So you're going to push me back. Then you say no.
Yes. No. I say yes. No. I say yes. No. I say yes. No.
Can you approach the poacher? No. You must be aggressive and be confident. Say no. You want to know, can you fight? How strong are you?
Yes. 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 No. Yes. No.
I married a man who was already married. And his parents didn't like me as a second wife. But I was now pregnant. And I don't have money. But I do my best, selling even a little thing to support my family. You must know how to fight, how to defend yourself. I can see some of them, they are strong. Some of them, they can become Akashinga Rangers.
Nditoti aone kuti zvii zvikuitika ndini ndinenge ndichitomiramira vhini kumunda kuti ndibate gedhe racho tirime ndinde ndichitokwanisa kuti ndizviite zvokuti hatina zvotinokwanisa kuita kana kamwana kasvika ndinako handina chokapa kusvika upa rinhasi apa ndikazoti kuno kune programu yekutorwawo vasikana ndakabva ndangotawo shungu dzokuti ndiuye. Most of the poachers are men, so they think we are not strong. They were saying, you ladies, you cannot arrest us. They were saying, when you become Akashinga, I'm going to burn your house, I'm going to rape you, I'm going to destroy your family. But I feel it in my heart. When I see you disturbing or poaching or hunting my animals, then I'll show you, I'll catch you. I love my elephants like my children, so I must protect them as I'm protecting my children.
Without protection in these areas, elephants would continue to be slaughtered. They would become extinct.
Poachers, they kill elephant because they want the tusk, the ivory. People from the villages, sometimes they give us information if there is someone who's poaching the animals. A raid is dangerous. For us, when we see gun, it tells us that gun is used to kill the elephant. It means you are a killer.
8,000 elephants were killed in the 16 years prior to our arrival, herded by fires, shot, poisoned, and snared. And those women, with the arrests that they've made, have been able to break up those syndicates and drive a downturn in elephant poaching across this entire landscape. The women are now the leaders. I'm expendable. They're the ones taking this program forward. For so long, we've been blinded by our egos from seeing the most powerful force in nature, and that's our woman's instinct to protect.
This job is dangerous job, so you must sacrifice your life to being Akashinga lady. Akashinga ladies, there must be one group, one family. Work as a team, work as a group, help each other, support each other. We become sisters. I'll teach you to fight back. I'll teach you to disappear. I'll teach you to use your power. I can see there are some brave ones inside this group. I'm so excited to tell them they are now accepted to be Akashinga Rangers.
Two things we asked for is character and spirit, and then we can teach you how to fight, so long as you have those things, and you all have them, stronger than I've ever seen anywhere. So everybody, congratulations on becoming an Akashinga trainee ranger.
I'm going to read the Akashinga oath. So as I'm reading, I want you to repeat after me. Is it clear? Yes, sir. I vow to use my skills and training. I vow to use my skills and training. To protect these animals. To protect these animals. To protect this land. To protect this land. In this mission. In this mission. I'm prepared to give my life. I'm prepared to give my life. This is my duty. This is my duty. I am Akashinga. I am Akashinga. I am a brave one. I am a brave one. You are now Akashinga. Today we are hundreds. Tomorrow is going to be thousands and thousands. I'll teach you to be brave. I'll teach you to survive. I'll teach you to be Akashinga.
right. What did you think of the staging there?
Personally, I think I lost so much of the story because of like the staging parts. Like
you loved it because of the staging?
I don't yeah, I really like the story, like for sure. Like it's super interesting, and the journey of all those women like working hard and like suffering to become a Kashinian. But like all the staged part, like the you know, like them walking and like turning back watching us, like that just like I lost so much of like the connection with the characters because of that. That kind of like showed me that I don't want to stage in my work. But yeah, I think we lost Francine. I know, but yeah, that's my opinion about the staging.
Any other comments?
Same comments as Quentin. The story was good, but because of the
Cable connection again. I hope I don't drop out. Okay.
I mean, this as Quentin said, the staging, a lot of staging scenes made me a little, I don't know how to say. I couldn't follow.
Uneasy.
I couldn't follow up it. Yeah, it's like for me, it's like it's like the movie. I mean, it was not like really as much as documentary. Maybe this is the incorrect definition between the documentary in my mind, between the movie and the documentary film. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's okay to be a purist, but I personally think that the staging, the opening scenes were obviously staged, slow motion, a great use of slow motion. You can't overuse slow motion. You have these women in the savannah in Africa, and they're moving in one and they're turning around. It's staged, but it sets the scene. It sets the scene about these are women doing men's job in a very dangerous situation. Their life is in danger. That's what it says. And so it's okay. What wouldn't have been okay, when you see the women standing at one point, they're telling you about their lives, that cannot be staged. That you have to trust that that's real, that they're really talking about their lives. But the simple fact of having women like turn to the camera as one, or look at the camera or go into slow motion, that only it adds to the drama. You can say it's over the top if you want. I think it adds to, it heightens the intensity, of course, but it heightens the message of the film, which is this is a dangerous situation like the kind you see in films, you know. But I don't know, what do other people think?
No, I agree with you, actually. I think it's because their life is so dramatic and the situation is so dramatic, and they're warriors, like in the savannah, like you said, like fighting against these poachers. I think it fits fitting that the whole thing is dramatic and that it's heightened out by these staging parts. And when they do talk about their lives, like you said, you feel that it's genuine and real and that they're not staging that. But the kind of the context and like it gives a specific mood to the documentary that is like it's somewhere between like fiction and documentary, but it's documentary. No, it's real, and they're not actors. They're real, like they're real.
Yeah,
doing your jobs. And I don't know. For me, the staging part was not like it didn't put me off at all. It just made me plunge more into this. And it's not just geographic. They have their style also. You know who like they're coming from. Like their documentaries are this way, and their pictures are made this way. So like coming into it that you're not watching like a indie documentary about the people in Africa. You're watching a not geo documentary about a subject. So
exactly. And Quentin, it sort of answers your question. If you can play, they're obviously playing, notice that they don't start the documentary while women have already started to train. They start at the beginning. This is a journey. You're going to go on a journey. It's classic storytelling. So you start before the women are just coming in. We start from the very beginning, and you have one main character, who someone even tells you is a great leader, and who addresses the camera and who takes, it's under her command sort of thing. So all of that, and there's a climax. When you see the elephant die dead, and then the night scene, and right after that, that's the climax. Poof, What happens? The women are all eating, everyone's happy, they're about to get accepted. That's the resolution. So you see, you always play with the ups and downs, with the emotions, and the climax is the moment of extreme danger or extreme emotion, if you want, and then things come back down. I think it's up for an award. I think it's being shortlisted as one of the best short documentaries for, I forget which festival or something like that. I saw that, I didn't notice, but James Cameron is an executive producer, so we can see where there's a bit of Hollywood-ishness in this. Other comments, questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Quentin said, because I think maybe I agree with him, but I see your point as well. It's more like, I felt like, what's the story here? Is it women, evolving and taking charge, and it's through this Akashimba sort of title that they gain this? Because if so, I felt like some of the staging was made almost as like a promo documentary to join the forces, as opposed to showing the story of the women, So I think that was the issue I had with the staging, is that I felt while watching this like, oh, this is something they can put on their website to recruit. And yes, it shows the story of the women, but I don't think it puts their story above the whole unit. And maybe that's what they were going for, but I feel like it's the story of Akashimba more than the story of each individual woman.
Oh, well, definitely. It can't be the story of every individual. There's too many of them. That's why there's one main character. I agree that it's done just a little bit, that it does feel like a promo for the whole thing. The guy, the secondary character who is there to bring tension, he's a white Zimbabwean, he's a macho guy, and these are women. So that's part of the tension. That's part of playing with people's emotions. He's a bit over the top, I find, but it ultimately works, I think, though, it's not, some people will recoil because there's too much manipulation, but, there are extraordinary shots, and, filming, be it a documentary or feature film, is you have to go away with something in your mind. And the shots that are done by drones, and anyone can shoot with drones today, like that, those would have been impossible shots for just you and me, but they're done like high up over the savannah, over the people walking, is fantastic. You won't forget that, and that's what you want to do. You want to send an unforgettable message, and I think there's one there.
Would I be able to add that I agree with Paula? Like at first it seemed like a bit of a music video, and I was like, what is this? Like, what are we watching? What are we getting into? And then I was kind of thinking about it, and I think part of our uncomfort maybe with the whole style of it is that we expect from women that there'll be like this sort of like emotional like deepness, and that they should allow us into these like deep storylines. And if it was a bunch of men, if this was a documentary about a bunch of men getting trained in the military, I don't think we'd take issue as much with it not being so emotional or something. I don't know. I think part of that, why it might be bothering us a bit, that it's not like this, like these deep personal narratives, although there were excerpts of that, which was nice. But is that we have this different standard for, or expectation for women.
But I think it's part of what makes it work, because it's, again, the unexpected. Rather than go into these long stories about women, the hardship of being an African woman, which we've all have heard about at some point. This is about putting women in a different situation and having them react in a different way, like men. And that's the beauty of it. And they rise to the challenge, And
yeah, I agree. But I think that's what's really cool about it.
Yeah. Exactly. So when you pick a story, you have to think about that. You have to think not only about telling storytelling techniques and stuff, but you have to go to the unexpected. You have to pick stories that are somewhat surprising, with people that can really tell a story and really carry your story. Now I'm going to show you the last thing, which is really something totally un-Hollywoodish, to show you how vast the array of possibilities are in documentary, even in short documentaries. Am I sharing my screen here? No. No, I'm not. Huh? Wait a minute. Share my screen. This is yeah. This is a short animated thing. Am I sharing my screen?
No.
No. Okay. Have I lost you? No. Share my screen. Am I sharing my screen now? Yes, yes. All right. Okay.
My mother, Mina, I don't know a lot about her. I remember that she was profoundly sad. It was sad being around sadness. One day I came home from school and I said, "Where's Mom?" He said that she's not coming home. He told me that she had a heart attack. It was a real gift of a lie. I can't imagine what it would be like if I was told that my mother killed herself, that she chose to die. As a child, I believed that when she couldn't take care of us, she went up to heaven and she made sure that we will be provided for by finding the best stepmother she could find and making sure she came to us. I was 30-something when I was like, okay, let's try this. So maybe I'm ready now. The first few months, I was actually really happy. He was just like a little baby bird. I felt like we did bond. But he wasn't growing and he wasn't sleeping. So I was feeling so sad and so wretched. And in this like combination of emotional anguish, physical pain, it was kind of like ice and acid. I found myself having thoughts that were almost like a mathematical equation. I'm a bad mom, which means that I should get out of the way. At some point, I just took a whole lot of sleep medication and I woke up at St. Vincent's Hospital. I believe that she sent me back. My birth mom met me at the gates and said, "Nope, we're not ready for you. Go back down and be the mama to your child and be the wife to your husband. Go live." I was like just looking to be strong enough to have another child. It was like the same tapes were kind of like back in the brain. Everything just felt impossibly heavy. At some point, I found myself with my green belt. I just wanted to wrap it around my neck. And so I did. And I wanted to pull it hard. And And I did. That was really the call for help. The gap between expectation and reality is where the pain is. And there I was experiencing a shitload of pain. And I kind of understood how heavy it was. But I think it was heavier for her. I was going to stay alive for my children. So I would be their mom for the rest of their lives, or for the rest of my life, but a really long life. My responsibility was to take care of myself. Dissolve the guilt and the shame so we could just deal with what is. Get through it when it's hard, celebrate it when it's wonderful, and live.
This panel in white coats start asking me questions.
Okay. So what you can do with, I thought I'd show that because, you know, animation is obviously a very complicated technique often, but this is not that complicated. You know, you don't have to, you just, it's drawings and then you, with special, you know, the right software, you can get it to move around sort of thing. So it's really basically a text, a monologue that drives the whole thing. So it doesn't take a lot of bells and whistles. What did you think? Someone? No? You did not enjoy that?
But if I may, like, yeah, I liked it a lot, and I think like with these stories, it was like, other than with animation, it would have been hard to get some visuals for it, and also maybe the visuals might have been really hard to see or to watch.
Yeah.
And with the animation, it can, like, for example, the belt part, it's making it less hard to hear. I don't know, like, kind of like, it's still super intense emotionally, but like it's less rough than it could be.
Yes, I agree that it both answers the question, how do you illustrate this? And without actually putting pictures of a woman that's killed herself, or, you know, and it softens the blow because it's extremely tragic and hard, you know, but it tells it in a kind of fairy tale-ish way, which allows you to get the full impact of the story, but contained in a, you know, but you'll notice, you know, it's, you know, there's always a journey. She starts with her mother, you know, killed her. It starts off really rough. Her mother kills herself, and then she decides she wants to have a baby, and then the unexpected happens. You don't think she's going to want to kill herself. That, you know, obviously this is a tragedy of her childhood. And yet that's her impulse. And then of course the climax is the second attempt, because it means she's pretty serious. And then of course the resolution is, you know, she decides to live. So you know, I think animation is more or less an acquired taste, but it's a very popular one right now. Graphic novels and animation. So and sometimes it's something to consider. It's something very difficult, however, to integrate. If you're doing a documentary and then you want to integrate a part of animation, that takes a lot of, that's not always that easy. It's not easy to go from one style to the next. But to tell a story, like a short story in 4 minutes that way, it's pretty interesting. I think.
I have a question with using animation though. In that situation, when the director cannot like do it by himself, sorry, how does like his job is restricted to like putting the content, so like all the audio we have, like the story how it's told, and then the person in charge of the animation is gonna, you know, like, is it really separated? So we provide the content with the audio and everything, and then we let the other person just like deal with the rest?
Well, I think everyone has their way of working, but I could easily imagine someone, the person, obviously this is the real person, the person talking, I would say, is the real person who was affected by this. Is her real story, and either it was her idea or someone approached her, but saying, you know, you should write that down, and once it's written down, it's given to someone to illustrate. I mean, I think you talk about the way you want to have it illustrated, because I don't think the illustrator can, you know, I think the illustrator really has to come after, contrary to documentary, which is filmed, where you're still, as you film, you're developing, you know, as we say in documentary, there's really three different chapters or phases to it. First, you write your script, and you write it out, or at least you have it in your mind, which is one thing. Then you go out and shoot it, and it's already a different story. And when you go to the edit room, it will finally be another story, because every time you add that, you know, because you're dealing with reality, the reality is going to change your story. And in the edit room, you're going to find things that are also going to change your story. So in this case, I think you write it, it doesn't change, and you find the right illustrator. And that way it's simpler in a way.
That's what I also found really memorizing, is how the animation made the really sad story just seem kind of relaxing and smooth almost. Like, I feel like it took a lot of hardship away from the story, because it was like this girl kind of floating around in this other world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting way of telling a story, especially, and there's a whole bunch of them like that in that series. Well, that's a series on conception, and and they're generally hard stories, but told in a way with animation, in a way that they're easier to take and easier to illustrate. Really, ultimately, I think that's one of the reasons they decided to do it this way. Have you dealt with animation, Barry? I can't hear you. You're muted.
There we go. We have used it. We used it in actually a humorous way to deal with the complexity of the rules of cricket in a film that we made. And we have used it a couple of other times. I find it works best, however, as I made a note, I was thinking of when it reveals the internal mood of somebody. And I'm thinking of the film that was made about Ryan Larkin at the NFB, which won an Academy Award, in which you move in and out of animation to reveal his psychological state. And if you go onto the NFB website and type in Ryan Larkin, first of all, you'll come across his films. He was an amazing animator, but you'll come across this NFB film about who Ryan was and the problems he faced with addiction and all sorts of other stuff. It's an amazing film.
Yes, it is. I agree. It's an amazing film. And of course, we Canadians with the NFB have, you know, quite a tradition of animation. We sort of the world experts on it. So it's something to explore if you.
We've also used animation as chapter headings in longer films when we want to move from one thing to another. Quite often it's a fun way to move into one area and then another. We did that with the So-Called movie, for example. So I don't think, although my statement is that it reveals the internal landscape, I think you can have fun with animation too, but it has to make sense within what you're trying to do.
So how big a deal is it? Like you have to find an animator, or can you just have someone who draws and then you give it to someone who puts it into life, sort of thing?
It's as difficult as finding the right composer. Simply because someone can do music doesn't mean they can compose. So it's the pacing, it's the timing. What I think is, my hunch is that she did her own animation, or you may be right, it was someone that she knew well that said, let's tell this story through animation, because maybe she didn't want to appear on camera telling her story, but she was comfortable just having her voice. But I think it's working with animation is very similar to working with music or with a good editor. You have to have someone who understands your sensibility and can create what you yourself can't create.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I've had the last class in 432, I had three use animated techniques in their films, just very leitmotif stuff, but fun, that conveyed stuff. They were very adept at bringing in all sorts of stuff.
So they did this on their own with the help of the internet, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, there's a lot of things to experiment there. A lot of possibilities. So, any last questions?
I just have I have a question for you, Barry. I'm new at Concordia. What classes are you a professor for?
I'm just doing a 532 this term.
Which class is that?
Documentary filmmaking.
Okay.
It's a diploma. It's the diploma program.
Yes, because in journalism we have to do a minor, and I really want to do my minor in film production so I can make documentaries, but we can only specialize in that, I think. So
one of the things you can look at, and you're lucky because Francine is there, is you can, next term, you can do special studies. I forget what the course number is, but I've done that with students where I've worked just with 1 or 2 or 3, and you go, and if your teacher supports you in doing it, then you end up doing, it's like a thesis, but for one teacher. You know what I mean, Francine?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what you're explaining, but it's getting clearer. Yes, I'm there to help students. So if any of you want to, I've said this, it could be through special studies. I wasn't quite aware of that until Barry mentioned it. And then you pick a project, and I could be the supervisor. But
that's exactly it. Yep.
Right, but for anyone else who has a project and who's in journalism or communication or whatever, and wants to pursue something, I'm there to help you if you want. So don't hesitate. Okay. Okay, so that was the workshop on the cutting to the chase, and there's a second workshop, I think in March 7th or something. March 7th, Robin.
So I put it in the chat. The next workshop is March 10th and then April 7th. So you guys can register for the next one in about 3 weeks. You'll see it in your emails or social media.
Yeah.
Hope everyone can.
The next one is Dear Diary. It's about personal documentaries. A lot of people wanted